This year, the film fraud in northern Myanmar has encountered an unprecedented subversion. Looking at the whole world, I want to say that Wolf Warrior is still conservative. I don't know if there will be movies with related themes released in the future. Previously, film fraudsters were generally very arrogant. It is said that they even arrogantly said when receiving phone calls from investigators, "If you have the ability, come and catch me boldly. I'm in northern Myanmar, you come to arrest me." Until now, I haven't figured out where this confidence comes from. Is it given by the third brother, telecom fraud as an illegal and violent business? Not only we are deeply disturbed, Lau Mei also has an unknown headache. The main person in charge of Lau Mei's business is our good neighbor, the third brother. In March of this year, a report released by the FBI showed that Americans lost $10.3 billion due to various telecommunications frauds last year, the highest amount in 5 years. As early as 2016, Xinhua News Agency reported a case of telecommunications fraud in India, where a group of 700 people earned millions of dollars per day by deceiving Americans. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center receives over 2,000 complaints every day, with an average of 1 out of 6 Americans being scammed by scammers. Based on the data I have checked, when it comes to telecommunications fraud, scammers are undoubtedly the kings. Some companies have conducted public opinion surveys. 30% of Americans have been cheated out of money, and 17% of Americans have been cheated multiple times. Previously, there was a news about an American old lady who was cheated 16 times and lost all her fortune before realizing she had been deceived. There are two main reasons for this situation. First, the fraudsters from India are indeed clever. Second, Lau Mei is powerless about this matter. According to our cognition, generally speaking, before being deceived, you can receive a warning call from the state, and you will be repeatedly asked to go to the bank to transfer money, so as to minimize the loss of the people. What is the situation on Lau Mei's side? In summary, you must be able to attract the attention of the FBI. On the other hand, the FBI is not just an ordinary household security guard. Why should they pay attention to you? There have been 16 instances of absurd news being deceived. As the saying goes, each leaf has its own specialty. When it was most rampant in northern Myanmar, a phishing post was very popular online. Why does northern Myanmar only deceive us and not deceive Americans? It's not that they don't want to, but because the expertise doesn't match. The first problem is the language issue. But as long as those people can learn to speak fluent English, they will be reduced to northern Myanmar, and secondly, they can't compete for business with Bharat, and the electric frying industry also has to pay attention to a territory division. There are enough historical factors and advantages involved in the electric blasting business targeting Americans. A long time ago, as a British colony, India learned English as the official language. The expansion of the British Empire brought English to various parts of the world. In the 80s of the last century, a vast economic globalization began, and the United States continued to move outward, and low-profit positions in the country were one of which was called diffusion. It hit Sanji's head, which can be simply understood as customer service. For Americans, customer service only needs to know English and be able to communicate effectively, without requiring much technical expertise. However, it does require a large population to support it. At that time, India, because of its higher English proficiency rate, had more convenient communication and extremely cheap human resources, about 1/10 of those in Europe and America. As a result, the United States shifted most of its office operations to India. At the beginning, many Americans refused, because the English of Indian customer service was too strong, and every time I answered, I felt like I had been scammed, just like us. If you receive phone calls with heavy accents, your heart will also be on guard at the first moment, but the price of Indian customer service is too low. In the local area of the United States, the price of hiring someone is much lower when it comes to India. Can hire 10. So even if many Americans protested, major companies in the United States still transferred customer service and after-sales telemarketing to India in the next few years. From campaign fundraising to notifying credit card overdue, from public opinion surveys to selling membership cards for newly opened fitness centers, almost all telephone notifications are handled by Indians. Over time, Americans have become accustomed to the taste of curry flavor. Over there, in order to better serve Americans, they continuously undergo training, whether it's in terms of speaking speed or official vocabulary. Are striving to let customers have a high-end experience. As for the results of the training, well, how to say, it is difficult to say, there should be progress, after all, Indian scholars said. Indian English is the purest in the world. Many overseas students also express difficulties in communication, which are all given by Indian customer service. It's just an outsourcing business. In 2015, India relied on telephone customer service. With an output value of up to $146 billion, the fate of 1,000 miles is connected by a single phone line. Big Brother has exported curry-flavored English to the whole world. I have reasons to suspect that many Americans are trapped in the quagmire of Big Brother's shops, largely because they cannot understand. But it feels very serious, very likely. What the customer service said is, "Can you tell me your name?" What the customer heard is, "You should pay a fine because you have been working for Americans for years." India knows the customs of the United States well, although many people don't understand what the customer service is saying, but the customer service knows that he is most afraid of cheating money to explain at his fingertips and scare Americans, one of which is the tax issue. Do you know who is the god of protection for the American gangsters? First is General Guan with a Gatling gun. The origin of this deified god is related to a legend. Firstly, the American gangsters accidentally discovered that Guan Yu is an all-powerful god of protection. Secondly, they possess the Gatling gun as the second Lord Guan. The IRS in India, which has armored vehicles, combat helicopters, and other armed forces, and the gangsters of the United States are also mainly engaged in drug trafficking, and these rampant outlaws are most afraid of IRF, Al Capone. As a legendary figure of the American gangsters, even the FBI couldn't touch him. In order to bring him to justice, the Americans had to go after him through the economic tax aspect. Al Capone, when he ruled the Chicago Mafia, opened hundreds of commercial laundromats. The purpose is to transform the illegal income of the gang, such as yellow and toxic, into legal income from the operation of a laundry room, in order to evade government inspections, commonly known as money laundering. When Al Capone learned that he would be closely monitored by the National Tax Bureau, he became very nervous. Even wanted to confront the National Tax Bureau head-on, but the huge gap in military equipment made it impossible. In order to obtain the criminal evidence against Al Capone, the National Tax Bureau sent undercover agents to infiltrate. After several twists and turns, they finally obtained Al Capone's genuine signature and the actual account book. The final gang leader was sentenced to 11 years imprisonment and fined $50,000. On January 25, 1947, Al Capone passed away, leaving behind 3 famous lessons: machine guns are more effective than submachine guns, and taxes must be paid to the federal government on time. Remember to wear a raincoat while applauding. Even powerful gang leaders need to bow to the National Tax Bureau. Trump has also been investigated and dealt with for tax issues, let alone ordinary Americans. Once they are involved in tax problems, they are basically in a disadvantaged position. The US tax system is very complex, and there is a powerful collection agency called the CIA, which often collects taxes with assault rifles. Whether you are in the underworld, the legitimate world, or the president of a country, daring to evade taxes is a dead end. The 3 brothers know well the pain of the Americans. If you don't do something, I'm sorry for the opportunity given by my big brother. So many Americans will receive such a curry tail call. Hello, I'm Barrett, a staff member of the US Treasury and Legal Department, and the ID number is 2502500XX. This phone mainly causes panic, usually accompanied by a sentence: because of what kind of tax issue, you will be arrested by the tax bureau in 30 minutes. Basically, the spirits of many people here are in a state of collapse, and then launch an account. Scammers usually do not ask for transfers, but instead ask victims to load the money into rechargeable cards, and it must be a rechargeable card that can be cashed out. Both Google and Microsoft have these gift cards, which are simply created for the purpose of fraud. The amount of money generally deceived is not too much, around $500 to $1,000, which is still a more commonly used method. There are also more people who fall victim to scams. Due to the small amount of money involved, hardly anyone chooses to report to the police, and some even feel lucky to have escaped a disaster once. Fortunately, the second type is more immoral. It belongs to the kind of one-hammer deal, the kind that slaughters a pig, and many Americans will receive a pop-up window on their home computer, which will prompt: your computer has encountered a problem and needs repair. Please provide a phone number. Many people will call to inquire, and scammers will impersonate certain customer service personnel, demanding a repair fee of $100 from the victims. Once they receive the $100, another person will quickly follow. Call the victim and explain that the first call was made by a scammer. Due to the exposure of the victim's information during the transfer, it led to a leakage of personal information. Victims who have been deceived once will generally choose to believe the second call and take measures to prevent their own information from being leaked. According to the instructions, transfer the money from your bank account to the specified new account. Once you reach this step, all of the victim's savings will be deceived. This method is generally targeted at the elderly population. 75-year-old retired veteran Glenn in Virginia was scammed nearly $800,000 within 5 months. Furthermore, after almost all of Glenn's money was scammed away, the real U.S. Internal Revenue Service notified him that due to early withdrawal of all his pension funds, Bloomberg paid approximately $200,000 in taxes. Why has India been repeatedly victorious in defrauding Americans? Because the vast majority of Americans, to a greater or lesser extent, have some issues. The New York Times has conducted a detailed analysis on this matter. For example, in Oregon, where drugs have been decriminalized, 40% of young Americans admit to having used drugs before the age of 18. In such a situation, someone calls you and says that they will arrest you in 30 minutes. You don't need to say what the crime is, you can think about all the bad things you have done before in just a few minutes. According to the FBI, the loss of electricity for American citizens. With the continuous growth over the years, the main reason could be that, with the increase in labor costs in India, many outsourcing businesses have gradually shifted to countries such as the Philippines. In other words, many Indians who were originally employed in these businesses have been affected to do customer service as the main job, but the transfer of Lau Mei's business caused many people to lose their jobs. In order to become customer service, inferior skills, nowhere to use, some practitioners. Unwilling to let the industry decline like this, these people with technology and ability have found an opportunity to take advantage of the large amount of private information at hand. They stole customer databases from tech companies they did business with, and they started scamming them, and soon they discovered that the cost of engaging in electricity inflation was very low. The returns are lucrative and fascinating, so Lau Mei's business shifted, but the customer service stayed, and according to India Today, on the dark web, it only costs 5,000 coins. You can access the personal data of up to 1 million people, including names, numbers, addresses, bank card details, etc., and bright media. The only difference is that India rarely uses violence or coercion to involve ordinary people in fraud. On the contrary, the vast majority of people voluntarily participate in it, these people's mindset. Basically, Indians deceive Americans should not be convicted because Americans are already wealthy. This belongs to robbing the rich to help the poor for a better life. Therefore, choosing fraud, which is a means for the majority of Indians to seek a better life, I can't help but sigh with emotion. Thanks to foreign mobile payment, it is not so convenient, otherwise I am only afraid of Indian fraud. It will be more rampant. Last year, the United States was defrauded by India, nearly $20 billion US, even Canada had $8 billion US. 2022. The revenue from telecom fraud in India is nearly $40 billion, while the export revenue from Indian agricultural and sideline products is $50.2 billion. Telecom fraud has become a pillar industry for India to earn foreign exchange. In the labor-intensive service industry, approximately 26% of Americans were victims of telecommunications fraud in 2022. About one-third of Americans admit to having been victims of telephone fraud, with 61.1% of them being victims. Admitting to being deceived not only once, not only by Americans but also by the British, in 2022, British citizens suffered losses amounting to £1.2 billion due to fraud. Approximately 10.6 billion yuan, there are both abundant and scarce goods here, and you can see the figure of Brother San. Hey, do you think English is easy to learn? What is most headache-inducing is that it is difficult to solve the electricity price in India. First of all, there are many people engaged in this industry. In India, approximately 1.5 million people, who have completed high school, choose the customer service industry to a significant extent. However, there is only a slight difference between customer service and electricity prices, but the wages differ several times. In India, customer service personnel who have undergone formal training receive a salary of about $100 and participate in the electronics industry. It will be directly quadrupled to $400 a month. In addition, there is a huge commission. Under the heavy money, there must be brave men, not to mention the halo of robbing the rich and helping the poor. Many times, some criminals will gather in a village to engage in fraud. Once there is any movement, they will immediately take corresponding measures, and the whole village will provide cover together. It is common to say that in this world, who can seriously harm the Americans, the third brother is definitely on the list. Has the third brother never been deceived? Of course not, there have been multiple rejections. The legend that is not normal is basically known to everyone, whereas the third brother's resentment, he deceived Lau Mei bitterly, the third brother is sullen and hard to swallow, and he is angry with one vote, and he is criticized horizontally. Whom does the heavens spare?